All right, so this is what we are going to talk today. We will talk to the basic OOPS concept of Java. It is more than what we generally study, and I am covering some part of those things which may not be important for interview, but it is good for you to know because sometimes actually we ask question to interviewer, not only they should ask question to you. And then Satish is going to talk 45 minutes. Actually, it was 30 minutes, but I made it 45 about the different things like what are the convertible skills, how to do CV preparation, and what are the changes people are expecting from the employer. Okay. So I have no idea what Satish is going to talk, and it is first time even I am going to listen that talk. So we will have both the talks now. All right. So starting with inheritance, overriding, and hiding. These are the basic three OOPS concept that we are going to deal. And then I have wrote a separate section that how JVM deals with the method in Java. So we need to little bit understand internally that is that JVM do something special for the method handling, or it is just a sugar coating at the API level only. So we will get to know about these things. Now, OOPS not being a new concept, you know that it is here in the market from quite a long time. But OOPS are good actually. They are not underprivileged like functional programming. So if people who know functional programming, actually functional programming concept came around like 60s and 50s kind of time frame, but it was like it was kind of suppressed in the market for a very long time because people said that no, we will not go and write functional code. Okay, we should write something like object oriented code, and object oriented code got a lot of highlight in the recent days and in the previous days. But now again there is a paradigm shift where people are saying let's not too much worried about OOPS, and we should worried about writing the functional kind of way where it is easy for people to understand that what your code is doing rather than writing too much big code. So you know the one of the basic disadvantage of OOPS, though I should start with advantages, but let me explain you the disadvantage is that it is too much of the bulky code. Okay, so when you start modularizing things, when you start encapsulating things, it is too much of the bulky code, and somehow people lost that what is the main logic written into the code. Okay, so anyway, we are going into 30-year-old era, and we will understand that what is object oriented programming, how object oriented programming can make your life little easier, and few of the things actually I am not covering too much of interview questions like how Firoz covered yesterday, but yes, we will see that what people can ask. Okay, so before going into the session, I will again show you the things that is very important for you to understand. That is JLS, and this I have shown in the last presentation also, that you should go and read the Java language specification. And most of my slides are motivated and made from these blocks, and I am using the same code which is written here. Okay, because these guys don't use something like kind of random codes and kind of animal and cat dog, all those kind of things. Even I have used a lot of animals and cat dogs, but in the end you need to understand some of the practical aspect. Okay, so just understanding that that a dog is an animal and bike has a tire, those kind of things don't work out in many cases. Okay, so you really need to, and you can see that these are written little complicated because they explain each and every aspect. But if you will spend some time and read these documents carefully, you can understand a very good concept. Okay, so and then I will also suggest you to read JVM specification. So Java language specification and Java virtual machine specification are two different things. So I am just showing you JVM JDK 7, but you can get JDK 8, 11, 13, 14, 15, whatever you want. Okay, and these guys will also discuss about the few things which we will discuss today, like how the say like invoke static happens, how invoke dynamic happens. These are the like the method invocation inside the JVM. Okay, so it talks about all the operators that JVM provides in the bytecode. Okay, so some of these we will learn it today. So nevertheless, you are going into the slides or not studying the slides or studying the slides. These documents are kind of like the sacred books, which most of the people follow in the religion. I mean, a programming or an engineering guide who is working in Java, they should follow these books as a kind of religious books. Okay. And our presentations are just like kind of motivation to go here and there. Okay, so starting with inheritance. Okay, so inheritance is nothing different than the natural inheritance of what we live our life. So we get a lot of things from from our parent, right? We get like we can get property from our parent. We get features also from our parents. We get problems also from our parents. Okay, so people who are like kind of some kind of parental problems like diabetes and all, they understand that they inherit actually everything from the parent. So the same concept goes for a programming language also, that Java gives a mechanism by which a object can acquire all the properties and behavior from its parent object, right? So what is good about it, that you can acquire all the properties and then you can reuse whatever you want. Okay. And that reusing thing, we generally do it by overriding. So overriding provides you that what you want to do extra. Okay, so from the parent class you are getting some method, but I really want to change this method into the derived class, so I will go with the method overriding. This is a very simple concept which we are following. After every 10 minutes I will give a pause and then I will check the questions, or you can have the questions, but in between I will not take the questions. Okay. So yeah, simple overriding example, I am just showing you some of the mathematical example of overriding, which is again from the JLS document. So you have a class point and then move. So what you do, move, that you add the dx and dy. That means whatever the movement is done, you can move. Okay. There is a flag. So again, go to participant and mute all. Okay. So what I have done is that I have overridden the move function and then I have added a limit function, which is an additional function. Okay. So limit is just letting you move under the limits. So if you are moving under the limit, you are well and good, else we will not let you move. Okay, so these are the typical overriding examples. So what happens in overriding? Your method in the parent class, you just override with the same signature into the derived class, and there are a lot of complications. Can I change the method signature? Can I add extra parameter? Can I change the return type? There are thousands of things. Okay, so we will not cover all those things, but I will suggest you that you go ahead and read all those things. Okay, because depends upon the kind of company you are giving interview and depends upon the person who are taking interview. Okay, so basically when we take the interview, we don't ask these things in detail. We don't ask in details, but in general what happens that many people want to dig you more on all these oops concept. Okay, so depends upon what you should be prepared. Okay, this is little smaller in font, but I have to put a big code. This is again a typical example of overriding where a buffered output is been written. So you have methods like put character, put string, and when you are putting a character, actually you are flushing out everything, and then you are putting a character. When you are putting a string, you are actually is putting a character array. Okay, and then you have a flush method where you are actually flushing out things. Now, if you will consider a line buffered output, actually line buffered output, what it do is that it actually overrides the put character. Okay, so it do some kind of special work with the put character. Okay, so it checks the new line, and if the new line is there, it will flush the output. And you can see a very interesting thing here, that what I want to show you the interesting thing. Yeah, the put character here calls the super put character also. That means it will take the super class call first, and then it will do some extra operations. Okay, so now I have created a line buffered output, and then I have said that I have trying to put string LBO. Okay, very important to know, put a string is not a method overridden into the derived class. Put string is into the main class. And again, important to know that put string is using put character method into the main class, I mean into the parent class. So be careful with all those kind of things. Can someone tell me the output, or you can just throw the output on the chat screen? The code is here for you. Sure, Gopal, I'll take care of that. I'll move the cursor. So please go ahead and let me know the output. I am putting a string called LBO/n LBO. Okay. So what will happen? You want me to make it full screen? LBO printed it 2 lines. That's a right answer, Manoj. Thank you. Any other guesses? Actually, it's a very simple question. So you really don't have to guess too much. So that's right, Manoj. Okay, so you have given me the right output. Okay. So why I am not showing you the simple overriding example? Because simple overriding example you all know. Okay. Class A, class B extends class A. In the class A, there is a method called print. In the class B, you will say print B. In class A, you will say print A. And then you know how the overriding works. Okay. So let's move forward. Okay. So this is the typical overriding example. Now, we need to understand that there is a difference between overriding and hiding. Okay. And I have shown you in the language specification, hiding has been mentioned separately. And hiding also have two concepts, that hiding of class method or hiding of class variables. There are two different things. We can hide a class variable and you can hide a class method. Okay. So what hiding do is actually it deals with something called static methods. So static method actually will get hidden. I'll show you the example. So let's get this example here. Okay. So you have a superclass where you have written greeting, which is a static method, and then you have a name, which is just a string method. And in the subclass, you are overriding greeting also, and you are overriding the name method also. Okay. So now what I have done is that I have created a reference of superclasses, and then I have created instance of subclass, and then I am calling s.greeting and s.name. So can you tell me that what is the difference in the greeting method override and the name method override? Okay, both the methods are getting overridden, but is it same or there is something wrong, something different here? So yeah, you can use the chat box, or you can just unmute and you can tell me. Okay, so let's still have it an interactive session, because I know the one-sided sessions are a little boring. Alexa, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name correct. Static method. Okay, Alexa, can you explain me that what is going here? No, you're not there. Sanjay? Okay, I think you all are getting the right answer. So instance called result to the actual object method. Yeah. So actually the method overriding is only the name method. Okay, the name method are the actual candidate for the method overriding, but The static method, what you have done is actually hidden here. Okay. So what will happen? Will it ever print you hello? No, it will not print you. Okay. So the greeting method, which is a static method, will be considered from a superclass only. And I will explain you later that how actually this happens into the bytecode level or how it happens into the JVM level. Okay. But if you are considering the output of this, so anyone have given me output till now? No?
Good night, Richard.
Good night, Richard. Good night, Richard. Seriously. Subhajit have said it correct. Good night, Dick. So let me show you into the, I am not sure where the good night went. I have written some kind of shadowing example. No, I have written hiding example. Okay. So yeah, this is the hiding. So sorry. So when you are saying s dot greeting, greeting will be taken from the good night. And when you are saying s dot name, s is a reference of super, but it is an instance of sub. So in the name, we have overridden this method. So Dick will come from here and good night will come from here. Okay. So don't worry too much about the names. I have just taken from JLS. So that's the output. Okay. Why I have covered this special case? Because it is a special case. It is a case of hiding. Okay. Now there is a concept of hiding of the data variables also, which I may have not covered, but I'll cover it in some detail. There is a hiding, and then there is a concept called shadowing. Okay, so shadowing is also a data variable concept and sometimes even a class concept. Okay, so shadowing is different from hiding if we are talking about the data variable or you are talking about the class. So here think of a class test and you are creating a x equal to 1, which is a static variable. And in the main, you are creating x equal to 0. So do you think that it should throw a compilation error, or it should give some kind of output? What do you think?
Should work.
It should work. And what do you think is the output?
For x is 0 and s.x is 1.
Okay. So why the local variable actually was not given you some kind of error when there is already a variable at the class level defined? At a class level, you have defined already a variable x, right? And then you have created a local variable. Then how it is possible that you have created two variables and both the variable scope is actually alive?
But one is static, right?
One is static. That's right.
One is static.
Okay.
And
So one is of at class level and another is at object level.
You mean to say one is at the method level and one is at the class level. Is it right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, actually, it is something called shadowing, where you have actually shadowed the variable, okay, and the value of the variable. You can definitely use even the defined things at the class level by using the class name. And do you know there is some other way also to use in place of test.x? Generally, you can read the class level variables by how in Java?
This dot variable name.
Exactly. So there is a keyword called this. Okay. So I generally see many people actually they will write the constructor and then they will create two variables called first and second, and then they will in the constructor they will create two again method level variable called first and second, and then they will say this dot first equal to first and this dot second equal to second. Okay, not a good way to do coding. Okay, not a good way to do coding if you are doing like that. Okay, so just try to have a different variable name because you are going under a concept of shadowing the variables. Okay, these concepts are just to explain you. It's not good to use in the actual software development. So never, always try to avoid using the same variable name in your constructor. Okay. So think like this dot first equal to first is not a good idea. Okay, so you should have this dot first equal to something like f, or this dot second equal to s. That's a much better concept, because the variables name are very much visible to you. Okay, you are not going for a shadowing concept. Okay, so this is the explanation, because slides are little verbose, that how is the scope happens and how is the variable inside the method has actually shadowed the variable outside. Okay, now can you tell me about this? Okay, this is interesting question. So I have imported Java util star, and I have created a class called vector, and I have put two variables there, and then in the main I have said that vector equal to new vector, and then I am just trying to print the vector first element. Okay, so do you think that this belongs to a compilation error, or again you will get some output? Okay, don't read the things downside. Okay, no cheating. Oh wow.
Vaibhav, your slide is showing the answer actually.
Yeah, my slide is showing the answer, because the slide is supposed to be jumping into the two options, but okay, I know that slide is showing the answers. So you guys got the idea that what is going wrong here. So Java util also has a class called vector, and then you have created a class called vector. So do you think that there is a collision here, that vector class will get collided with the vector class? Yes, it will get collide if I'll use the complete import statement. Okay, I will say java.util.vector. But right now here I am saying java.util.star. That means load the class on demand. Okay, so vector class I have demanded. No, I have not demanded the vector class. I am just calling the vector class which I have created here. Okay, but if you run the same code with importing java.util.vector, definitely it will tell you that this vector you cannot create. This vector class you cannot create. Okay. So, actually my life is more hell with this Zoom menus. So using the class vector declares here.
Vaibhav, one question here. Vaibhav,
please.
Sorry to interrupt, Vaibhav. One question here. So when we do a dot star, you mean that all the classes are not loaded, only what we reference is loaded?
Exactly. Is that Surjit?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Surjit, exactly. So when you are saying star, actually that means you are saying load the class on demand. Okay, I know that there are many paradigms, and a lot of people actually don't use star. They use the exact thing what is getting used. But even when you are using star, the JVM will not load the complete Java util and put it into your class loader. Okay, so it will just load things on the demand. And this is a very typical example which you can see, where you can tell that definitely vector class has not been loaded yet. If it has been loaded by the bootstrap class loader, which we have learned in the last time, it should have given you a compile time error. It should have told you that you cannot create a vector class, because bootstrap class loader has already given me a vector class, right? Is that?
Got it. Thank you, Vaibhav.
Okay. So what you can do is that you can put minus verbose when you are doing Java, and you can check the output, and you can understand the difference, that what are the differences that are going around. Okay. So you understood the concept of shadowing. I have explained you the concept of hiding, and I have not explained you the concept of hiding in variable, but you know the concept of hiding on the variable. So yeah, it's very much like kind of shadowing, but the variable hiding is little different from the variable shadowing. Okay, so please refer to the JLS if you want to see the example. Okay, and if you will see the JLS, actually it will not this JLS. If you will go to hiding, okay, when it will explain you the concept of so you can see this all are copied from here. Okay, so when they will explain you the hiding concept, they will tell you clearly that in this respect hiding of the method differs from the hiding of the field. Okay, and hiding is also distinct from shadowing and obscuring. Okay, so you should know what is shadowing, you should know what is obscuring, or you should know what is the field hiding. Okay, so all these things definitely cannot cover in talks, but you go ahead and you read all the details. Okay, that is my personal request. All right, so now going forward with shadowing. Okay, shadowing is done. Now we will come with the another concept which is very important for us to know is that composition. Okay, people who come from college background, they actually listen so much about the object oriented programming that they just know inheritance and they think that inheritance is the like kind of God. But it's not true. Okay, so there are a lot of problem with inheritance, and inheritance have some kind of underlying basic disadvantage. Okay, so before going into the disadvantage of inheritance, or I will say the limitation, not the disadvantage. Okay, okay, there is some sound again. I will go to the participation. I will say mute all. Okay. So the concept is very simple, that inheritance give you a feeling of each a. Okay, so tiger is a cat. Okay, people who know the cat family, actually tiger, lion, leopard, all comes to a cat family. Okay, and cat has 4 legs. So whatever the first statement you are saying is a statement of inheritance, and whatever the second statement you are saying is a composition. Okay, so composition say that you please come inside me. Okay, you belongs to me. Whereas inheritance say that I have a separate entity, but I came from you. Okay, so I have properties of you, but let me leave a separate entity. Okay, so tiger and cat is a separate entity. Even the cat and legs are separate entity, but the leg is getting itself vanished inside the cat class. Okay, so that is what the composition means. Your code has been made from small things, and it has been made under a composition. Okay, so typical example people give like bike. So bike is a composition of tire, engine, handles, mirrors, all those kind of things. So it's all a composition. Okay, but when I will say like say like Yamaha, so I will say Yamaha is a bike. So I cannot say Yamaha has a bike. So if I'll say Yamaha is a bike, actually it's an inheritance. Okay, there is a parent class called bike, and Yamaha is inheriting a lot of property from the parent class. Okay, and in the first case it is composition. Composition means I will accumulate the class inside it. So here you can see I have created a leg class, and then I have created a base class called cat. So cat will have the leg class inside it. Sorry, not the bracket. It's not a method. And it's a composition, whereas the derived class tiger extends the cat. So it's a typical example of inheritance. So I am not going to cover the detail that what is the difference of inheritance and composition. There are thousands of PPT, thousands of talks, thousands of YouTube videos, thousands of blue paper available which explain you the composition and the inheritance difference. But here I just want to touch base that what is the issue with inheritance which actually composition solves. And even composition have a lot of issues actually, which I will just orally tell you, but I have not covered into the slide. Okay, so yeah, so these are the issues of inheritance which composition somehow solve those issues. Okay, so I don't know if there is someone here who use design pattern very often. You guys should take a session for the design pattern. If not, then I will definitely go and take a session on the design pattern. In Java, in the JDK code, we use a lot of design patterns. Okay, not only the one which people know like singleton. Okay, so we use thousands of design pattern, and there are very good amount of design pattern which is actually made up with composition. Okay, like strategy pattern and like builder patterns and lot of other patterns. Actually, they are all the product of composition. Okay, so the first and the foremost thing are the most important thing to know that all relationship cannot be predefined. Okay, inheritance force you to define the relationship in the early stage only. Okay, so if a relationship is getting defined at runtime, or if a relationship or even a different demand comes in your code, actually inheritance breaks. Okay. So say like one of the typical pattern, okay, like say I have created a kind of burger. Okay. I am just telling you the softwares like how the McDonald's and all your work. So I have created a burger, and then I have inherited classes called big burger and small burger and maybe something else, cheeseburger. Okay. Now the same kind of thing I have with say Coke, and I will have like the big Coke and the small Coke. This is a real example I'm giving you. So don't think like I'm just giving you some kind of false example. Okay. Now this all hierarchy is defined. Now what happens that they will say like I want to create some kind of a special menu where I need a big burger and a small Coke. Okay. Now what happens that with this kind of demand, actually you break the complete inheritance, because you cannot just take a child from this and you cannot just take a child from this and create an extra class. Okay. So it's badly broken in inheritance. Okay. So what you have to do is that you have to look into the properties and you have to create a composition over the property. You should not go with the normal notion of inheritance. Okay. So I have an example into the next slide where I'll show you. Runtime behavior can change, and runtime behavior if changed, inheritance is a failure again. Okay. And many times multiple inheritance is a requirement. Okay. So Java till JDK 8 was not supporting even the multiple inheritance, but yeah, after JDK 8, actually we have done some work over it. But multiple inheritance is a kind of dangerous game. So when you are inheriting from two parents, actually you don't know that I should respect this parent or I should respect this parent. Okay. I should take behavior from this guy or I should take behavior from this guy. Okay. But there are a lot of cases where multiple inheritance is required, and in the real life, multiple inheritance is required in many of the cases. I have just covered one case into the next slide. So overall, actually inheritance creates a fragile code. If demand changes by customer, if demand changes on runtime, inheritance has a tendency to break. Okay. So we should use composition over inheritance always. I will not say like that, because composition also have few problems, like composition write too much of the code. It write too much of the repetitive code. Okay. So that's kind of problem that composition also face. Okay. So going to the next slide, I'll just take the example on the next slide and then I'll come to the questions. Okay, this I have taken it from some document, either from JLS or somewhere from the internet. Okay, this is taken from the wiki page of inheritance. So it gave a very good example. Like you have an object and you have three method into the object called update, draw, and collide. Now there is a class called visible where you draw something. If you're drawing something, I will say that yes, you are a class visible. In the solid class, I am just saying that you should have a collide functionality. That when two things are colliding, actually when two objects are colliding or many objects are colliding, I will say yes, you are a solid. And movable means you are you can move, you can update your locations. Okay, so if you are overriding update method, you are good, you are a movable class. Okay. Now I have created this kind of structure. Now I want a class like called cloud. Now what is cloud? Cloud is a movable and a visible, but it's not a solid. Okay. I want to create a class called building. So building is a solid and visible, but it is not movable. I can create a class called player, which is actually solid, movable, and visible. So can you see here that it's a typical problem of multiple inheritance, right? So these methods, leave these methods apart, but think like if you are creating a building, okay, and there is a method which is in solid and which is in the visible that comes from the parent class. And what is the parent class? Parent class is an object. So then building has to decide that I should take it from the solid or I should take it from the visible. Okay. In player, it is 3-level multiple inheritance. Actually, out of solid, movable, and visible, if there is a common method, then the player has to decide that which one I have to take. Should I take it from the solid, or should I take it from the movable, or should I take it from the visible? Okay. So these are typical multiple inheritance problem, which we called diamond problem also. I think most of you know about the diamond problems. You can go and read about the details that what is diamond problem, how to resolve the diamond problem, how C++ handles diamond problem, how Java handles diamond problem in JDK 8 onwards, all those kind of things you can study. Okay, so now I'm coming to the question, is that this concept is little bit clear? Okay, there is a statement from Sanjay that I am start to feel that inheritance is good only when there is some processor classes or class which does not do something with the data but does not hold the data, and inheritance in the data class which soon becomes annoying and difficult to maintain. Yeah, Sanjay, I appreciate your point. Actually, your point is very well written. And the thing is that, yes, if basically you should take like this, if you are defining things and you are knowing things at the compile time, okay, you are good with the inheritance, okay. But if your code has some kind of dynamicity and the runtime the behavior will change, or not only runtime, many times customer will change your behavior, okay. They will tell that I need this combination, and then what happened, all those classes and combination you have packed inside the inheritance, okay. Now you have not done the composition. What will happen, it's become totally tough that you need to bring those inheritance and you have to bring, okay. So what happens into the composition, that I make the modular things, and you want to say me that, okay, I need a player composition. Okay, player composition is nothing, just add solid, movable and visible, your player composition is done, okay. So this kind of problems are there. I will not suggest that, okay, inheritance is always bad, but yeah, inheritance have some kind of big level restrictions actually, okay. I will also add few examples. I have not added example because I have to cover a lot of other things. But this cloud and the building and the player where I have taken, actually they have also wrote the code with the example of composition also. Okay, so it's a wiki page. I will just take it because things are free to take from the wiki page. So that's why I always refer this kind of document where I can easily take the things. Okay. So now I am leaving all the other details, all the nitty gritty on you guys to go and study that what is the difference, okay, where all the places where composition used. You will end up reading to a lot of design patterns where you think that composition is the right choice. Okay, even you have the head first book of the design pattern, which keeps saying composition on each and every page actually. Okay, use composition everywhere. Okay, so please go into the details of this. Okay, let me see. I think I am getting some questions. Okay, yeah, there are a lot of discussions going on, so I am perfectly fine with that. You guys can continue the discussion. Moving on, something which is a little different from, and which may be the first time you are seeing all those kind of things, but it is very important for you to understand. Okay, so I will explain you polymorphism, that what is the underhood of polymorphism, how the polymorphism is handled by the JVM. Okay, it is possible that other VMs or other languages handle it different way. But Java actually do a lot of work for polymorphism, and the polymorphism in a concept in Java that you perform single action in a different way. So you have a method written at multiple places, and you need to decide at the runtime that which method I want to call. Many of you, if you are not knowing that you have a compile type polymorphism also, and we have runtime polymorphism. Actually, compile time polymorphism none of us discussed because it is very simple. Okay, when you are using some kind of a static method, actually that kind of polymorphism is called compile time or polymorphism, or whatever we discussed. Actually, we hide the data. So nothing. It's not actually a polymorphism only. You hide the data because the method is actually on the level of the class. It's not for the instance. Okay. So we should discuss a detail of polymorphism at the runtime. Okay. Java provides you method overloading, and it also provides you method overriding to do the performance to perform polymorphism. Okay, so we will see some of the examples of polymorphism, and then we will see what are the good thing with polymorphism and what are the kind of little performance issue with polymorphism, and then we will see that how we resolve it. Okay, so before going into the detail of runtime polymorphism, you should understand that if there is a class called base and then there is a derived class, and if you are saying base b equal to new derived, which is a common statement if you are using polymorphism, this is called upcasting. Okay. The JVM language specific, the JVM specification clearly write a very big section on upcasting, that this means actually upcasting means you are upcasting your instance variable. So for the normal understanding, if you have an interface, you have a class and you have a class B extends A, implements I, you should understand the inheritance concept as B is a A, B is a I, B is a object. Object, you know, all the bus comes from the object. So object is like one of the basic class in the Java which every class extends, right? So I hope till here things are clear. And when you are saying base B equal to new derived, actually you do something called dynamic method dispatching. Okay. Dynamic method dispatching is just a fancy name. It has nothing to do. It is just a runtime resolution of a method call. So we will little bit understand that how a method call happens, how the JVM deals with the method call. Okay. Good. So I am not going to show you more polymorphism example and not all those tricks like I will put base class this side, I will put base class that side. What will happen if the signature will change? Figure it out, all those things, guys. Those things are very important for interview. So please go and get your hand dirty with that. Okay. That what will happen if the class signature will change, method signature will change. It will call to the very simple, like there is a method with object and there is a overridden method with a string. So if I am calling with a string, will it go to a string method or it will go to the object method? Okay. If I am calling with a string and integer, it will go to the string or it will go to the object or it will just throw you an exception or whatever the compilation is. So all these things go and get ready if you are really preparing for interview. If you are not preparing for interview, no one will going to ask you a damn shit. You will never get to know to write those things in your code. Okay. Those are just the bad way of writing code, but they say that you should know bad things before knowing the good things. Okay. So please get that clear in your understanding. Okay. So I can show you a bytecode view. Before that, I will just run a simple code and I will show you the bytecode view here only, that how you see the bytecode. Most of the people are knowing here, but say like I am taking this example only and I am running this. Okay, this is a good example of polymorphism. Let's use this only. So typical animal, cat, dog, all those kind of things. So we have 3 animals which extended and we have put what they are different eating, and I have copied it from somewhere which I have mentioned it at the top. Okay, so you can go and read the complete details. Now what you can do is that I will just show you the bytecode, that is the class file. And for that I should open a terminal. Already one terminal is open, so I'll just use the already working terminal. And okay, doesn't matter what I'm running. So let me just show you. So okay, this is superclass subclass example, but you can see that we are using something like invoke special. Okay. In fact, I should go with -c. Or yeah, -c. I need to take verbose output also, so I will use -b. Okay. So what I'm showing you is just that in the bytecode or in the Java class file, you can see that we are using something called invoke special. This handles some kind of a special method. We are using invoke static. This handles some kind of special method. Invoke virtual. This is again a special method. Invoke dynamic. This is again a special method. Okay. So Java actually creates so many bytecode just to handle methods. Okay. So we can definitely discuss that why so many keywords are required to just handle a method call. Okay, because there are many kinds of method call, and we will see in our presentation that how these things work. Okay. So this slide is little clumsy and clouded, but let me explain you that invoke static. Very simple to understand that it deals with the static methods. Okay. So whenever you are calling a static method, you are going to get a call called invoke static. Okay. Now you can start thinking from now only, oh, a static method, that means when the second time it will get invoked, probably something will not happen. Okay. So you can think invoke special is something which we handle to call the private methods, or we handle to call the superclass method and constructors. Okay. Invoke virtual is the most common and most common for all the methods which you write. So by default, Java say that any method can be a overridden method. Okay, it is not like C++ where you have to put a special keyword to tell that the method can be overridden or method cannot be overridden. Okay, in fact, I will explain you why Java do so. But just hold on. Okay, if I'll not explain you till the end of this code that why Java consider all the method to be overridden and why C++ actually tells you to write a specific keyword, then only they will override the method. Okay, so Java has an underlying advantage over it. Invoke interface is for the interface methods. Okay, so you know the interface is handling totally different, and there is a invoke dynamic that has recently came into, not recently, it's came long back into JDK 7 actually, where we try to help out all those other language, dynamic languages which works onto the JVM. Okay, so think like languages like JPerl, Ruby, and Scala and all those things. So they use a lot of dynamic features. Okay, I will show you a very small example that what are dynamic features and how they used to manage, and now how they can manage with the invoke dynamic. Okay, so this is a bytecode of methods. It has nothing else to do with your data variable. There are 5 different bytecodes just to handle the methods. Okay, now I have explaining you how the method invocation actually JVM handles. So whenever a method comes, JVM has to perform 2 actions. It has to perform a method resolution, and it has to perform second thing called method lookup. Method resolution means you know that method have a signature. It need to be resolved that I have a complete method table, and whatever the method you are calling with whatever the parameters you are calling, it need to fix somewhere into the complete method call. If it is not fixing, then I will say the signature is not matching, or I will throw some kind of exception or the compilation issue. Okay, so method resolution is one work, and second is called method lookup. Okay, so method lookup is again required that when I'm calling a method, that which method actually it should pick if there are multiple methods with the same name. Okay, which is typical overridden scenario. Okay, which one I should get it. Okay, so we do a lot of things actually. We use handlers, method handlers. I am not going to go into the detail, but just understand that for any method invocation, JVM performs 2 actions: method resolution and method lookup. Okay. Now what happens that every method invocation instruction has an index to the entry into the class constant pool. If you are not knowing what is class constant pool, don't worry. Okay, you can just understand it's some kind of pool. Okay, where all the methods are written. And entry consists of a method name and a method descriptor. So method name will be written and the method description, the method descriptor will be also written there. Okay, so I have to go and keep looking that, oh, you called this method, let me look into the table. Okay, let me look into the pool that this method is available or not. If this method is available, definitely I'll help you out better. If this method is not available, then I will just say that you are idiot, go and write a proper method. Okay. So all the 4 or 5 different method execution way which you have studied, that invoke static, special, virtual, interface, they have a different way to look into the pool. And because of the performance issue, we have created so many different bytecode keywords. Okay, so what invoke static do? Invoke static do is that it first time go and look into the it will resolve the method and it will do the lookup. and then it is done. When the second time you are going to get the same method, I am not going to go to the resolution and look up, okay? Because I know it's a static method, it is not going to change anywhere. I should just take the parent one, okay? Invoke special also you do the same thing, because invoke special is a private method, right? So you do the same thing, but in invoke special we just have an additional check that the instance should not be null. If instance is null, then probably invoke special should fail, okay? Invoke static, will we do the instant is not null check? No, not required, because it's a class level method, right? So a static is a class level method, but invoke special is actually an instance level method, okay? You know what is class, you know what is instance. Oh, one second. Oh, my battery is down, just give me a second. Okay guys, sorry, battery was down, so let's get back. So you understood, invoke static and invoke special are very similar kind of thing, just that there is a additional null check. Invoke virtual, yeah, invoke virtual is a headache, okay? Because when you do method resolution, you save the method index, and when you use it for the method lookup, okay? And next time when also you do, you have to find out the lookup that, okay, I should call to the parent class, I should call to the reference class, which one I should call. So you can understand that invoke virtual call is a little bit less performant than invoke static and invoke special, okay? You are getting the point. And invoke interface is, I mean, you have to, again, like invoke virtual, you have to do all the time, okay? So even you cannot just save the resolution, okay? So it completes both the method resolution and method lookup every time if a method is getting invoked, okay? So this is the 4 basic things which you have understood. And yeah, 5th thing, that is called invoke dynamic, I have not covered in this slide, but we will discuss it also soon. There are any questions, concern, complaints on these things, you can just go ahead and ask. So invoke virtual is for inheritance, 100% Sanjay, that's the right thing. Any other question, guys? Okay, so no questions means things are good, okay? No questions means things are good. Now, 1 second. Yeah, going to something which is tedious, actually. So continuing the JVM method invocation, now you think like you are running a language like Ruby, where you have written this code, def add a comma b, a plus b. Now this kind of code is a total shit for Java. Okay, the JVM have to do a lot of hard work to understand why, because at the compilation I have created the bytecode. I know that what kind of data types are required, what kind of methods are required, but here I am not understanding. Okay, I don't know what is the type of A, what is the type of B. I don't know how to resolve A plus B, because plus is a operator, plus is a method here. Okay, so how the JVM will deal with this kind of thing? So JVM deals with this kind of thing from JDK 7 onwards, when we have introduced something called invoke dynamic. Okay, so invoke dynamic have a lot of other features. Okay, so you can understand that first what these guys used to do, that they used to get the rescue from the reflection. Okay, so these languages were not existing before JDK 7, they were existing, and they were using this kind of dynamic language typing. Okay, but they were using lot of reflection. Okay, so what they used to do is that they used to go for the reflection, and they will call get declared method. So you know how the reflection works. In the reflection, actually you have a lot of special powers by which you can go and look for the internals of a method. Okay, so I just probably I will not explain you reflection in the detail, but I will also explain you that how reflection works, how unsafe work, maybe sometimes in the next class. Okay. So what I can do with the reflection is that I will call a reflection called get declared method, and this method call is on the string class. I need to pass the method name and what are the parameters of that method. I need to pass everything. Okay. And then that reflection thing I have to invoke. So I can use a invoke here, right? So invoke object 05, and then what you will see, you will get hello. Okay. So direct invocation is very slower in reflection, because in reflection I always need to go and check for the visibility. I have to do some kind of a lot of security checks. I need to check all the parameters are fine or not. Okay. So you can use reflection, but reflection is a much slower and it's not a safe way. And even after JDK 9, we have a very high restriction over the reflection. Okay, so you just cannot use the reflection. So how to deal with this? There are two ways to deal with this. You just use invoke dynamic to resolve it. Invoke dynamic has been introduced for this, where actually I provide something called method handle, and method handle will bind with what actually you can dynamically decide that. Okay. So I have multiple methods lying that. Okay. And now I have to bind with any one of the method. So invoke dynamic will help me in binding with any one of that. Okay. And you can use it programmatically also by using something called method handle, which has been introduced, I think, in JDK 8 or maybe JDK 7, where you can say method.lookup and you can say lookup.find virtual, and then you can get the class name and the types, and it can let you call very much how the reflection works. But this is how the things happens in this is how it happens with the method handling. Okay. So method handling is a big chapter. We can discuss it any day, or you can, I believe that it's better that you can go and look into the complete detail of method handling, that how it used to work with the reflection and how invoke dynamic and the method handle is providing you the extra benefit over it. Okay. Yeah, before going into some of the Java internal things, I will hold it for the Okay, what is the question? That is there something common between method resolution as discussed from different invoking bytecode and reflection or GNI method? Thanks. Okay, you got the answer. Thanks. Any other questions, concerns, complaints, queries? I hope things are clearly understandable. If you're getting some kind of noise in my background, just ignore that, because I'm into the common room now. So this is kind of most of the things I discussed on the API side. Just I want to tell you something over the polymorphic calls and how we deal with the polymorphic calls inside the JVM. Okay. So most of those guys which are quite regular into the JEC, they know this because we have discussed a long time. So you know that Java deals with something called JIT compiler. Okay, JIT compiler actually optimizes a lot of things at the runtime. Now we understood that polymorphic calls are costlier in nature. Okay, because you need to resolve those calls at the runtime. Okay, but the JIT compiler is smarter. Okay, so it will keep seeing that if your few particular calls are not polymorphic in nature. Okay, means you are actually not overriding those calls anywhere. After certain iterations, okay, those iterations we call the hot iteration, right? Like the JIT is defined like I will do optimization after 5,000 iteration. Okay, so after those iterations, what it will do, it will tell that, oh, look, this method is overridden. This method should be overridden, but this guy is not overriding this method anywhere. Okay, so ideally this is not a polymorphic call. Let me make it a monomorphic call. Monomorphic call means a call which have only one definition, mono. Okay, so the JIT compiler will go and it will make that polymorphic call as monomorphic call. Okay. And what it will do with the monomorphic call, it can now inline that monomorphic call, right? So say like you are calling get color return red. Now you are seeing this get color is nowhere getting used. So what I will do, I will directly go and put red data variable into the place where the get color is getting called. But you need to always understand that if possible, that call can be a virtual call. It can be a overridden call. Okay. So I need to make sure that this call is not a overridden call. Now, how the JIT compiler can make sure? No, JIT compiler cannot make sure. It just with the statistical data of 5,000 run, 10,000 run, it assumes that this guy is not going to make this call a overridden call. But it is possible that at runtime, the call behavior can be changed and that call can be overridden call. In that kind, what JIT do is that it go via a path of unoptimization or de-optimization. So wherever we do optimization with JIT compiler, we always put a kind of hook there for the de-optimization also. That guys, if something goes wrong, don't go and complain. First, give this hook back to me. I will look at what I have optimized here. I should first de-optimize that back and then only we will work. Okay. So JIT compiler or the optimizations under the JIT compiler is a different section. In the Bangalore JUG, you can see a lot of presentations available there. Even I have a video over it, but we can discuss also sometimes like how most of the optimizations and de-optimizations happen. What is the performance benefit? Okay. And bimorphic calls are those calls you understood now that where the override, where it has been overridden once. So there are two signatures available for one method. Okay. So what I will do, I will inline with a if-else condition. That's it. Okay. So I will put a if-else condition and I will inline. Okay. A lot of languages even do trimorphic call, quadramorphic calls. There are a lot of possibility that you write 4, 5, but you cannot do it for multimorphic calls or the polymorphic calls, right? So in the Java, in the JIT compiler, we handle up to bimorphic calls. Okay. So bimorphic calls, if you are not overriding a method or you are overriding a method only once, we will either make your call a monomorphic call or we will make your call a bimorphic call. Okay. I can show you the assembly code also for that, but don't go into that much detail. But what I can show you right now is that, yeah, I am in Java. So I will show you that where you can see the details. Print flags final, and you can grep on grep minus ignore case morphic. So yeah, you can see all these flags that are available in JVM. So you can see use bimorphic inlining, which is by default true. Use only inline bimorphic, that is also true. Okay, so you can see that there is nothing it has explained you about the monomorphic call because there is no flag for monomorphic call. But bimorphic calls, yeah, you can make true, false or false to whatever you want to do. Okay. And I know that there are other languages like Kotlin, all which can even let you handle the multiple level of overriding. So even if you are like overriding 3 or 4 methods, you can definitely handle that. Okay, I have discussed that also somewhere. I am not remembering now, but if I can just show you that where you will get all these details. Okay, so there must be some talk on the JIT compiler, understanding the Java virtual machine, or runtime and static compiler. You can see. Okay. And yeah, I have a presentation for Kotlin and the runtime compiler where I have explained all the different kind of optimizations which we get. So these are simple things, but yeah, this is the monomorphic call, and I have given the example, so you can go and look into the example. And I have also explained how the things work, and the benchmarking is also explained that how the monomorphic and bimorphic calls. See, if a normal monomorphic call, it is almost taking like 2.8 nanoseconds per operation. But when you inline a monomorphic call, the time is taking very less. Look at the difference with the bimorphic calls. But you can see in the normal Java case, the monomorphic calls time is not going down. But if you will see the same thing with the Kotlin, because Kotlin use some different inlining methods. Okay, like the inline, you can definitely look for the advantage with the benchmarking. Okay, so there are a lot of without explicit inlining, yeah, you can see that. Okay, the monomorphic calls are much lesser. Okay, so if you have like explicit inlining, so there are a lot of things available here. You can go and look into all the details. Okay, so let's not deviate much with the top. But I just want to tell you that the virtual calls or the overridden calls are costly, and JIT have an underlying technology to maintain all those things. Okay. So this is it. I will finish my presentation here. I understood that I have not went into the details like interview kind of things, but I think this is more to cover all those things which are like kind of important for you. Okay. Those nitty gritty things of like, okay, which will give a compilation error, which will not give a compilation. You are good, smart enough to figure it out from yourself. Any other questions? If not, no questions, I will stop it now. Okay, thank you guys. Inline method, yes, Gopal, I think Sanjay has explained you. Inline method is nothing. It's just putting the complete stuff of one method into another. Okay, so that is called inline method. Inline method is always helpful because method calling is costly. Okay, so method calling is always costly. It is like you are doing some work in your home and then you are delegating your child to do some your work. So this is the same cost of the inline method. When you are calling another method, actually you have to save the pointer from the current method. You have to create a new stack over it. From that stack, you have to go and call something else. That guy will finish the work. That guy will come back. The stack pointer will get popped out from the stack frame, and then you will come back. Okay. So a lot of things. Yes, Sanjay. Yes, thanks a lot for this question. So yeah, now you understood that why Java actually provides overriding for all those things. So what happens that in Java, say what happens that in Java actually JIT compiler decide that which method need to be hot and which method need not to be hot. Okay. So typically I give the example of this financial calculation. Say like there is a method called calculate salary or get salary. Now this method will get hot on the salary calculation day. Okay, it will not get hot on every day. So how a programmer can define that? How I can say that, okay, make this call a virtual or not a virtual? Completely not under my control. Okay, because now the JIT compiler can understand and it's seeing all the method that, okay, this method is getting called a lot of time. I will consider this as a special call. So I will do a lot of virtual optimizations, which I will discuss sometime, that I will do a lot of method overriding on that kind of thing. Okay. So a programmer is not a right person to decide that which method should make a virtual or which method should not make a virtual. Okay. That is the reason that why Java it handles it onto the JIT level.
అర్థమైంది కొద్దిగా పూర్తి కాదు.
Okay, that was a good
అదే
idea. Okay, so I hope that I made it clear. Okay, so you should just understand that Java by itself understand that which method I should give more respect and which method is getting called multiple times or which method is a hot method, rather than leaving on a programmer or a developer to define that, oh, this method should be virtual, this method should not be virtual. Okay, so if a method is not virtual, Java will take care of it. If a method is virtual, Java will definitely take care of that also, and it gives the special privileges for the optimization in the SPSS. Okay, so that's it from my side. I am stop sharing my screen, and Satish, are you there?
Yes, we do.
Okay, So Satish, I will do two things because I have to go somewhere. I will make you co-host also. Okay, first let me stop recording.